Hello and welcome to OLT 321, European Literature. My name is Warren Reed, and today we're jumping into Lecture 5, where we're going to talk about Gustave Flaubert and his novel Madame Bovary. We're going to talk about three topics: the life of Gustave Flaubert, the place of Madame Bovary in world literature, and the place of Flaubert in world literature. And we're going to do it fast. Head's going to spin. You won't even have time for the cheetah to lose his spots. It's going to be so fast. Okay, enough joking. What's important for our purposes in the life of Flaubert are two things: love and epilepsy. We can say often that a writer's work is shaped by his or her experiences in life, and this is pretty obvious with Flaubert, especially Madame Bovary and his other work, Sentimental Education. Anyway, in terms of love, he tended to have affairs with married women, and the first time it happened, his heart was broken, and according to some ideas, that kind of changed his relationships with women, and he couldn't really love them completely after that. They were just sort of objects for his desire. So all these broken hearts and all these improper love affairs gave him an understanding of a certain kind of woman, in particular the adulterous woman. And that helps inform his writing of Madame Bovary, as we'll see. Second off, he had epilepsy. This is the first writer of the course, but not the last. We will discuss who's had epilepsy, and epilepsy is more well treated now, of course, but back then it left him with not so many options, and so it limited his social life, and basically ended up living a life of solitude, which of course allowed him the time and the isolation to work on novels. So there we go. That's what I really want you to know and be aware of about the life of Gustave Flaubert. The second topic is the place of Madame Bovary in world literature. Madame Bovary is the first novel to really treat this topic of adultery, and in a way that it really hasn't been seen in this way before at the time, in the 1850s, and he was put on trial for indecency, but he was acquitted. Adultery was a very sensitive subject, especially in a society which likes to oppress women, keep them down, and it also was probably even more difficult to swallow for those times because it shows adultery as an expression of revolt by oppressed women. They're oppressed in society and perhaps by their husbands, so as the only way they can fight back is through adultery. So, we have to talk about the place of women at the time, especially middle-class bourgeois women. They were educated, but it was intended that they would stay home and wait to get married, and then they'd have children and maybe do some needlework, some arts and crafts, raise the children, that kind of thing. There's a certain type of woman who is extremely bored in that kind of situation, such as Emma Bovary. Madame Bovary is also a realist novel which criticizes the romantic tradition, which is shown as leading people astray, giving them false ideas of what love and life is supposed to be like. The novel also influenced other writers, such as Tolstoy, whose Anna Karenina also is a famous novel, Russian novel, and it treats of the same subject, of course in his own way. The novel is also studied in universities around the world, and there's been films and series made about it, and even myself, I studied it at the university. So now it's your turn. You can join the crew. Okay, finally, the place of Flaubert in world literature. Flaubert is a very important realist, and he was also a perfectionist, and sometimes he would spend hours and hours and days just fixing one paragraph, and he was always in search of le mot juste, the exact word that he's looking for. He wasn't lazy in his vocabulary, just throwing out any old words. No, he really wanted the exact word that he needed. He was also very attentive to the craft of writing, and he was against authorial intrusions. Remember we talked about Balzac coming in and making comments, these authorial intrusions which break up the story. Flaubert didn't like that. He was opposed to that, and he did his best to avoid that. As such, he's also known as the novelist's novelist. So someone who wants to be a novelist, they need to read and study Flaubert. They can learn a lot from him. And he's also compared to Ivan Turgenev, the Russian novelist, and Henry James, the American novelist, both realists. So all in all, that's a whole lot of praise for them. And so it shows his importance in world literature. Holy mackerel, that's it. That's the end of this one. Briefly, we've hit the high points. Like I said, I wasn't lying. Briefly, we looked at the life of Gustave Flaubert, the important parts that was relating to his work. The place of Madame Bovary in world literature and the place of Flaubert in world literature. Now we're going to go in the next lecture, lecture 6, dive into more meat and potatoes of Madame Bovary.